Well, Germany is Europe's biggest economy and leads the way in many sectors. One of them is something most people don't really like thinking about: waste management. German services are so efficient that neighboring countries are sending their own rubbish to Germany for disposal. CCTV's Guy Henderson reports from Cologne.
This is where German rubbish that can't be recycled goes. Up to 3,000 tonnes are dropped off every day at this waste-to-energy power plant in Cologne. It's just one of 81 Germany built in the last 2 decades as a better option to burying waste.
Not producing any waste is the best option. If waste is being produced anyway, recycling is the next step. Should that not be possible, rubbish should be burnt to produce energy. Landfilling should be totally excluded or forbidden.
Incinerating this stenching heap helps generate electricity for a quarter of the city's inhabitants, but only for as long as there's something to burn. German recycling rates are amongst the highest in Europe, and its standards are too. Most pollutants at this plant are carefully removed, as is almost anything that could be reusable. Even the leftover ash is utilised to build roads. By importing waste from other parts of Europe too, Germany is becoming the rubbish hub of the continent. Guy Henderson, CCTV, Cologne.
In 2012, Sweden began importing nearly 1 million tons of trash from its European neighbors. The Swedes claimed that they themselves simply did not produce enough trash and needed more. Only 4% of household waste is landfilled in Sweden each year, but why on earth would anybody want more trash? But in the case of Sweden, it's actually less of a cost-saving measure and more of an energy-saving measure. Sweden buys trash from nearby countries like Norway and uses it for electricity. Over 2 million tons of that waste is burned and converted into power for over 250,000 homes. This sort of exchange is called waste to energy and is becoming increasingly popular in Europe. Buying each other's trash may sound kind of crazy, but it's actually an ingenious solution to issues with taxation and energy. Of course, when it's cheaper to send waste out of the country than simply deal with it at home, there may be a bigger problem at stake. Either way, we're going to need a lot more ingenious solutions like these because the world's population is rising, and thus so is our level of trash.
Did you know that the urban waste produced from cities around the world is enough to fill a line of garbage trucks stretching more than 3,100 miles? That's a distance from Florida to Washington every day. And things are only expected to get worse. Thankfully, some cities such as San Francisco are paving the way and trying to change the way we think about trash.
San Francisco plans to become zero waste by 2020, which is a pretty ambitious but awesome goal. And this is the main nerve center for all of the city's recyclables. This is where everything ends up to be sorted and processed. What is zero waste?
It's an idea, and it means sending next to nothing to landfills or incinerators. And it means sending next to nothing to landfills or incinerators.
In 2009, the city passed a law requiring residents and businesses to sort their waste into recyclables, compostables, and landfill trash. Recology is the private company that handles it all.
When I started at Recology 23 years ago, the recycling rate was around 38%. Today, we've
Recology is the private company that handles it all.
more than doubled that.
So far, San Francisco has diverted 80% of its waste away from landfills, and its success has been getting global attention.
Government representatives from all over the world visit this facility to learn about how they might be able to replicate what's being done here. What is the current method of waste management or recycling in your town?
What we have a lot of in Denmark is actually incineration, where you burn the waste.
Do you think that you might implement some of what you've learned here?
One thing that we have heard a lot is the value of composting. We don't do that a lot. So maybe we will go home and do more composting.
San Francisco now collects 650 tons of food scraps, yard trimmings, and other organic waste every day. That material is brought here to be turned into compost. San Francisco now collects 650 tons of food scraps, yard trimmings, and other organic waste every day. That material is brought here to be turned into compost. San Francisco now collects 650 tons of food scraps, yard trimmings, and other organic waste every day. That material is brought here to be turned into compost.
This is one of the most modern composting facilities in North America.
Okay, so you can see a bunch of stuff here that people have thrown away. Mostly like wood here, a shoe, this flip-flop.
Yeah, there's a...
What's up with shoes?
Well, there's 7 billion people on the planet, so there's a lot of shoes. We're in a culture here in California where people are moving very quickly, and so people make mistakes. So we get the things that are not supposed to be here, we get them removed right away, right at the beginning.
After the waste is ground up and screened for plastic and other bits of trash, the organic matter left over gets watered and aerated. The piping system then filters out dangerous greenhouse gases produced by microbes. In about 60 days, the compost is complete and sold to local organic farmers and vineyards.
How does composting help the environment?
Composting keeps materials out of landfills. It returns nutrients to farms. It attracts and retains water, like rainwater.
I mean, it smells like hell. How does composting help the environment?
Composting keeps materials out of landfills. It returns nutrients to farms. It attracts and retains water, like rainwater.
I mean, it smells like hell. But it's actually very beautiful what you're describing here. You know, people's food scraps, which might otherwise be waste, comes here to essentially feed these farms and produce new crops.
Well, from this facility, more than 300 vineyards have received the compost and applied it to their vineyards. Farmers are using the compost to grow cover crops that pull carbon out of the atmosphere and return carbon back to the soil. This is one of the best things we can do in an effort to slow down climate change. People have really heard a lot about environmental problems. They want to hear now a lot more about environmental solutions. And return carbon back to the soil. This is one of the best things we can do in an effort to slow down climate change. People have really heard a lot about environmental problems. They want to hear now a lot more about environmental solutions.
How could we solve two world problems? The poor quality of roads that we drive on and the waste plastic epidemic that we all see in the world today. We use waste plastics to add into an asphalt mix to create a stronger, longer lasting, pothole-free road. The teacher had asked the kids what lives in our oceans, and after a few answers, my little girl put her hand up and she said, plastics. mess. Now, I don't want my little girl growing up in a world where this is the case. Give the analogy of iron brew. We will never tell anyone what is actually in our mix.
The process is exactly the same as mixing a conventional way with any additions into a bitumen product.
How could we solve two world problems? The poor quality of roads that we drive on and the waste plastic epidemic.